In this video I'll be talking about the environmental benefits of electric vehicles and how they compare to gasoline-powered cars in terms of carbon emissions and air pollution. Introduction. A definition of electric vehicles and how they work. Electric vehicles, or EVs, are vehicles that are powered by electricity rather than gasoline or diesel fuel. They typically have an electric motor and a battery pack that stores the electricity used to power the motor. The battery pack can be charged by plugging the vehicle into an electric power source, such as a charging station or a standard electrical outlet. Some EVs also have a small gasoline engine that can act as a generator to extend the vehicle's range. Electric vehicles have several advantages over traditional gasoline-powered cars. They have instant torque, which means that they can accelerate quickly and smoothly, providing a more responsive and enjoyable driving experience. They also have fewer moving parts, which means they require less maintenance and have a longer lifespan. Additionally, they produce no emissions while driving, which makes them a more environmentally friendly option. Brief overview of the environmental benefits of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles produce no emissions while driving, which means they do not produce pollutants such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter. This can have a significant impact on air quality, particularly in urban areas where traffic is heavy. Electric vehicles also produce significantly lower greenhouse gas emissions than traditional gasoline-powered cars, as the electricity used to power them can be generated from a variety of sources, including renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power. Additionally, electric vehicles are much quieter than gasoline-powered cars, which can reduce noise pollution. The use of electricity as a power source instead of fossil fuels, such as gasoline and diesel, results in a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution, which has a positive impact on the environment. Electric vehicles are also much quieter than gasoline-powered cars, which can reduce noise pollution. This makes electric vehicles a more sustainable and eco-friendly mode of transportation. 2. Carbon emissions. A explanation of how electric vehicles produce fewer carbon emissions than gasoline-powered cars. Electric vehicles produce zero emissions while driving, as they do not burn fossil fuels to power the vehicle. In contrast, gasoline-powered cars produce emissions from the combustion of fuel, which includes carbon dioxide, CO2, the primary greenhouse gas responsible for global warming. The burning of fossil fuels is one of the major contributors to climate change, and the use of electric vehicles can help to reduce the amount of CO2 and other greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere. Comparison of emissions from the production of electricity versus the extraction and refining of oil. Comparison of emissions from the production of electricity versus the extraction and refining of oil. The production of electricity, especially from renewable sources such as solar and wind power, produces significantly lower emissions than the extraction, refining, and transportation of oil. Additionally, the emissions from electricity production can be reduced over time as more renewable energy sources are used to power the electric grid. This is in stark contrast to the extraction of oil, which is a highly polluting process. It involves the destruction of natural habitats, the displacement of local communities, and the release of pollutants into the air and water. See discussion of how the increasing use of renewable energy sources to power electric vehicles further reduces carbon emissions. As the use of renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power increases, the carbon emissions associated with the production of electricity used to power electric vehicles also decrease. This means that electric vehicles can have an even lower carbon footprint than gasoline-powered cars, especially when charged with clean energy. The use of renewable energy sources not only reduces carbon emissions but also helps to protect the natural environment and conserve resources. Nature, in its own way, has provided us with the means to power our vehicles without causing harm to the environment. The sun and the wind, two of the most abundant and sustainable resources on Earth, are now being harnessed to power our vehicles and reduce carbon emissions. The increasing use of renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind power, to power electric vehicles is a step towards a more sustainable future, a future that is in harmony with nature. 3. Air pollution. A explanation of how electric vehicles produce zero emissions while driving. In contrast to gasoline-powered cars, electric vehicles produce zero emissions while driving, as they do not burn fossil fuels to power the vehicle. In contrast, gasoline-powered cars produce emissions from the combustion of fuel, which includes pollutants such as nitrogen oxides, NOx, particulate matter, PM, and volatile organic compounds, VOC. These pollutants are released into the air through the tailpipe and can have negative impacts on both human health and the environment. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, produce no tailpipe emissions and do not contribute to air pollution. B. Discussion of the health and environmental impacts of air pollution from gasoline-powered cars, including smog and particulate matter. Air pollution from gasoline-powered cars can have a range of negative impacts on human health, including respiratory problems, heart disease, and stroke. It can also have an impact on natural ecosystems and the environment, such as acid rain and smog. Smog is formed when pollutants such as NOx and VOC react with sunlight, creating a thick haze that can reduce visibility and irritate the eyes and lungs. Particulate matter, which is made up of tiny particles of dust, soot, and other materials, can also have negative health impacts, particularly for those with respiratory problems. See comparison of the tailpipe emissions of electric vehicles versus gasoline-powered cars. Electric vehicles produce zero tailpipe emissions, meaning they do not emit pollutants into the air while driving. In contrast, gasoline-powered cars produce emissions from the combustion of fuel, which includes pollutants such as nitrogen oxides, NOx, particulate matter, PM, and volatile organic compounds, VOC. These pollutants can have a significant impact on air quality, particularly in urban areas where traffic is heavy, and can contribute to the formation of smog and other forms of air pollution. Air pollution not only affects human health but also the environment, plants, and animals. Electric vehicles produce zero emissions while driving, which helps to reduce the amount of pollutants in the air, and this can have a positive impact on air quality and human health. By switching to electric vehicles, we can reduce the amount of pollutants in the air and help to create a healthier environment for all living beings. Conclusion. In conclusion, electric vehicles have a range of environmental benefits when compared to gasoline-powered cars. The use of electricity as a power source instead of fossil fuels results in a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. Electric vehicles produce zero emissions while driving, which means they do not produce pollutants such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter. This can have a significant impact on air quality, particularly in urban areas where traffic is heavy. The increasing use of renewable energy sources to power electric vehicles further reduces carbon emissions and helps to protect the natural environment and conserve resources. Additionally, the production of batteries for electric vehicles can have an environmental impact, but efforts are being made to improve the sustainability of battery production. The environmental benefits of electric vehicles have the potential to play a major role in reducing carbon emissions and air pollution. The transition to electric vehicles is a crucial step towards a more sustainable future, a future in harmony with nature. To achieve this, increased adoption and investment in electric vehicles is needed. This can be achieved through government policies, incentives, and subsidies to support the transition to electric vehicles. It is important for individuals and organizations to take a proactive approach and make the switch to electric vehicles. By doing so, we can work towards a cleaner and healthier environment for all.